General weather outlook. First, a confession. Last week, the first week was calling for temperatures above freezing, but not nearly as warm as it was. We had a couple of days that were really quite warm. The forecast, the weather pattern was actually quite right. What I misread was the snow, the dirty snow, and enough of that snow scoured out by ground blizzards in the northern plains area that we got some extra warm temperatures. I'm talking here about eastern North Dakota, northern Minnesota. Not too stormy. The weather pattern setting up. We'll talk about the warmth. We'll talk about where the storms will be and when we might get some snow even after all this melting goes on. Let's check the weather pattern though. Still looking at relatively split flow in the jet stream, so it's a fairly weak pattern over North America, and the northern branch is far enough north that we've got another surge of warm temperatures with 60s and 70s as far north as South Dakota and Iowa, and even some 40s and 50s across most of North Dakota and Minnesota. Only the far northeast is a little bit cooler. Down south, getting a few stray 90s to show up in the Rio Grande Valley and parts of southern Arizona. A lot of warmth in the south. Now here's what the pattern's doing this week. It is going to dip a little bit. We're going to cool things down some by this light blue stuff getting into, say, North Dakota, northern Minnesota. That's just cooling things down a little bit to mostly 40s or so, maybe a few 30s, but generally above freezing weather. As we approach toward the weekend, I do think it'll cool down a little bit more, and by the time we get there, we'll see actually another little surge of warmth. It's that time of year where the weather pattern will be very, very changeable. The general trend here as we go through this next week, which takes us up through March 26, is we're seeing ridging in the west, warm air surging northward, and except for the highest elevations of the mountains, a lot of warm air in the western half of the country. A little bit cooler, but we've lost the frigid weather for the eastern part. The frigid weather is holed up in the far north. Now, as we turn our attention to the second week of the forecast, I do expect a little bit colder weather to drop down, and it'll drop a little further. We may even get sometime right around the turn of the month, the end of March, or sometime into early April, a few periods up here in the far north where it stays below freezing, although I do expect that will be relatively temporary. The precipitation pattern, not a lot really. It's not a particularly stormy pattern. There will be some rain and thunderstorms that will produce some locally heavy rain from the mid-south up into the northeast. The northwest edge of that this week looks like some wet snow coming up. Right now it looks like maybe Iowa, Wisconsin. That could change a little bit. Most of the western half of the country, with beginning of a ridge building in, is looking fairly dry. The second week here, still looking dry in much of the southwest and the central plains. Probably some rain and snow in the northeast, and this will likely be a moderately light snow, but sometime around the end of March, early April, northern plains will get a little snow.